Pew Research shows 25% of young adults between 25 and 34 living back at home with family, a major shift from just 9% in 1971. Psychotherapist Stacy Kaiser says it's become so common, there's a new term for it.
It's called a boomerang kid. That's someone who leaves home and then comes back. And I am seeing more of that than ever before.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
Oftentimes, parents live in this paradox. The challenge of having kids at home, but also wanting kids to grow up and move out. And when we have a healthy view of that, we look forward to those moments where our kids become adults and grow up and go on and contribute to culture and society. But what do we do when kids wrap back around? When they go out and face culture and society and end up boomeranging back into our living rooms? Is that a failure for parents? It can be a dark place for families where kids feel like failures and parents feel like we didn't equip our kids well enough to face the challenges of the world. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on the Celebrate Kids podcast in our daily segment, Facing the Dark. Dr. Kathy is going to explore this more in depth and help us understand how we can approach parenting well, but also understand the dynamics of what it looks like to raise children in a fallen world that go out and engage a fallen culture with hope and plans to participate in society. When that doesn't happen, all is not lost. And as parents, we will always be that, parents. And our kids will always be that, kids. Sometimes in these moments, we need to think of a better way to move forward. And let's turn now to Dr. Kathy to hear more on this topic. So Dr. Kathy, boomerang children have often been portrayed in the media as having some kind of monetary drain and jeopardizing parental retirement or parental progress after kids move out. Now, boomerang children are kids who move out maybe at 18 or 19 or whatever, or they move out at some period of time, and then they whip back around into your house maybe later on in life. Maybe something happened to their job prospects or college didn't go well or what have you, and they move back in with mom and dad. There's an idea out there that really this type of thing is bad for parents, right? And so parents see this move back into the house as something that depletes their savings, or now they've developed children that are really dependent on them. But there's a new study that looked at a sample size of 51 to 69-year-old parents. And it defined a boomerang kid as an adult child under the age of 30 who returns to the parental home without being a caregiver to the parents. And the study found that there's a share of U.S. adult children that are living with their parents, and this number has increased since the 1960s. And in 2020, during the pandemic, about 1/3 of children between the ages of 18 to 34 ended up living again with their parents. With men 18 to 24-year-olds, they were more likely to live at home than with a woman when they were 25 to 34 years old, the study found. And I thought this is an interesting thing to think about, because oftentimes we think of parenting kind of as an 18-year journey. And now after that adventure kind of wraps up, the kids move out. But sometimes they end up kind of boomeranging, coming back in. And we've seen this a lot inside of our culture recently. What is really that role of parenting? Is it an 18-year adventure and you kind of send them on their way? Or when kids kind of look at this and grow up and then come back around to live with the family, is that a failure in parenting? Can you help me understand that a little bit?
I love the way you asked that. I would say in most cases, it's not a failure. Do I think that there could have been a parental effect? Absolutely. Let's be honest here. For instance, if a parent was overprotective and did not help a child learn to be resilient and come back readily from the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, a bad semester at college, if a kid doesn't know how to cope with that, he or she might run home to mom to be rescued. And so this, again, is another reason for moms and dads to raise up children who are mature and confident and brave in order to take care of their stuff. But one of the things that I say when I speak to parents, which is what I do most often, I always say, parents will always be your noun. It will always be your noun. Your children could be 80 and you could be 100 and you'll still be a parent. And a child will always have the noun child. Now, do I think that the responsibility in that relationship shifts? Absolutely. Do I think that it's important all the time? I actually do. Certainly during the developmental years when you're teaching children more about how life works, there's a different value placed upon your role than when you're 50 and they're, 30 or, 25, and they're discovering, adulting. But let's be honest, we all know that a lot of our young people are launching later, or again, this research says they're absolutely boomeranging back. And that sometimes is a choice, and sometimes it's a necessity. This is where parents have to decide to put up boundaries. It's appropriate to say, hey, I'm really sad about your company downsizing, or the only way that you could keep your job was to move across country, and we're glad you didn't want to move far away, so we'll support you for 6 months, or we'll support you for 8 months. Like, parents have a right to put a limit and to make sure that their adult children understand if this is in fact difficult. It's also okay for you to charge some rent. Now, if your child is gaming every day and not getting a job, then you can kick them out just like a landlord would if they can't pay their rent. Now, I don't say that lightly because this is family, and yet isn't the parent's job to teach a child how to live in this world of ours? And that would include, financial responsibility and work a job even if it isn't the job that you want. So it's complex. I don't say any of that lightly, but I want to give parents authority to choose, an authority to be brave, to say to a kid, this is how it's going to work. Yeah.
And I heard it said once that about 95% of a parent's face-to-face contact with their kids happens before they're 18. And then at 18, it drastically changes. You have about 5% face-to-face engagement from there on. So I'd love to hear you speak to some of the things that we should understand and realize about what those 18 years in our house really means and how that sets up for the excitement. I call it kind of excitement. My wife and I have that perspective that from 18 to however long we live, that relationship that we get to have with our kids is really an exciting thing because we get to see them, blossom and become parents themselves or become people that participate in society and all of those other things. But those first 18 years are really important. What should we understand and realize about what happens for kids in those first 18 years?
So interesting. Wouldn't it be fascinating to ask young adult children that question? Like maybe somebody who's 20 to 25 years old, hey, as you look back on those first 18 years of your life, what did you see your parents do for you? What was the benefit of you having a parent? Be interesting from their perspective. Certainly what this says to me is we need to be present now. I mean, that stat is remarkable, that maybe about 95% of your face-to-face time happens before age 18. So take advantage of these years and make sure that you're not on social media in your room and they're gaming in their room. Make sure that you're together. Try to eat your meals together and go for walks together and go to church together. And those kinds of things, as much as possible, would be very, very important to want to be together, to say to our children, I have time now. I would love for you to teach me a new game. Could I teach you my new game? Hey, would you be willing to read a book together? I'm really fascinated by, what our pastor was talking about, and you seemed really interested too. Could we read it together and learn together and live together and love together and grow together, pray together and play together? This would be wonderful. It also says to me that this is why moms and dads are tired. Could I just put that out there? I have such respect for moms and dads, whether you have one kid at home or 8 kids at home, for you to be intentional, for you to prioritize your children, for you to read to them and let them read to you, and to help with science projects and history reports and piano lessons and soccer games. If you're not tired, you're not parenting well. And so let me just honor you in that and understand that this too shall pass. Invest a lot now and enjoy it. I pray that you can enjoy these years. And then I pray that your kids launch well and that you've parented strong and long and that they're good kids with mature character and strong faith in the God of the Bible so that they do want to launch well into the next phase of their lives and that they don't come home and harass you, but they come home because they want to spend time with you.
I echo Dr. Kathy's hope. I echo the hope that your kids launch well, that my kids launch well, that as they go out and face the challenges of the world, that they don't feel bogged down by it, and that when they come home, that it is a celebration of the things that they're doing, the places that God has called them into. But when that doesn't happen, there is a responsibility for us as parents, but also for us as members of the body of Christ. It's something that Timothy implored his church to be mindful of and to seek the best of. And he talks about this in 1 Timothy chapter 5, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 1. This is what Timothy writes to the early church. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but extort him as if he were your father, and treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters, with absolute purity. Give proper recognition to those widows who are in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn, first of all, to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. The widow who is really in need and left all alone puts her hope in God and continues night and day to pray and ask God for help. But the widow who lives for pleasure is dead even when she lives. Give the people these instructions so that no one may be open to blame. Anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. You know, Timothy's words here to the early church are important exhortations, especially at that time period, but even more now so, as we experience different tumultuous realities inside of our culture. We've gone through pandemics and we've been battling with recession and economic challenges that put the future of our young people in a place that's hard to manage. And Timothy's encouragement for the early church is that we look out for each other. And it's an encouragement for us too, that as we're looking at the landscape of what's in front of kids, and especially adult kids, that we would remember the calling that God has for us. To treat younger men as brothers and younger women as sisters in absolute purity. And may that be an encouragement for you today to give light and hope to those who are facing challenging times, even if it's your kids. And we pray that that hope and encouragement is a huge, bright, shining light for your neighbors and for those who you're caring for. And we hope that this podcast is a bright light for you. And if it is, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app or drop us a line at ask@ignitethefamily.com. From all of us here at the Celebrate Kids team and Dr. Kathy Cook, my name's Wayne Stender, and I want to say thanks for listening, and we'll see you here again tomorrow.